Alrighty, guys. Welcome back to the Bait Tank Podcast. Today we have Matt Florentino with AFTCO. He's going to tell us about everything AFTCO does and his fishing journey and how it kind of brought him to where he's at. How's it going, Matt?
Yeah, what's going on?
Thanks for doing this. This is awesome.
We're here. We're doing this.
We got an awesome tour of the showroom and the which we're in the showroom right now, but also the entire back factory, and I can't believe how big this place is.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive when you actually, go through the front doors and, see what's going on behind the scenes. But we have here in beautiful Santa Ana, California, so we're very local. Our whole operation is here, from the office staff to fulfillment, all the inventory, everything else. So it's where all the magic happens.
A lot of history in this building.
But yeah, that too,
since
58 and kind of roots and heritage. With tackle manufacturing, back to the 50s to the 70s, and then on through the apparel and what you see today, at large, out in the world. So
before we get too deep into AFTCO, I want to hear about you, your story, how you got into fishing. Obviously I'm sure your dad was a big influence, but how'd you kind of really start to know if like fishing was for you?
Yeah, I mean, shoot. Yeah, like you said, it's all my dad's fault ultimately, but in a good way. So growing up, actually a lot of it was just spent around the water, around the beach. I grew up in the South Bay, still live there today actually. But my dad liked to surf. So when I was a Grom, we would just go to the beach. And it all started kind of there. Those were my early days of like first time really thinking about fishing, some people, catch trout, some people catch bluegill, what have you. But I mean, we were, I was looking for sand crabs with my, my little sand pail and finding sand crabs, pinning them on a Carolina rig and chucking it out there and seeing what we could catch. So it all kind of started. That's where it all really started, as far as I was 6 or so. And then it kind of, evolved and progressed from there, which ended up being, albeit, I'm 39, so this is like the late 80s, early 90s. Then went to fish in the barge, which then turned into the half-day boat, which then turned into the three-quarter-day boat, twilight, overnight, that whole gambit of sport boat fishing. As a kid, that's what we spent a lot of time doing, purely saltwater, learning how to fly line an anchovy on a Penn squidder or what have you, learn how to fish surface iron, kind of, just kind of working up the ranks, so to speak, as far as my know-how. And, kind of under my dad, though. My dad there the entire time, and he's always been, I would say, relatively progressive. Back then, fishing plastics, he was always, he was the guy always throwing surface iron or throwing, what do you call them, scampies and, the bomber, bucktails, you name it. I've, kind of been around it growing up. So I've been very fortunate, though, too, to kind of experience some of that's 90s fishing and also into kind of what it is today. But yeah, that's really where it all started, and it snowballed from there throughout the years with my dad. So
yeah, it's, you always see that guy on the, not that guy, but you always see somebody on the, let's call them cattle boats or the half-day boat, three-quarter-day boat that's doing something different. And those guys, the majority of the time, are catching a lot of the fish. Yeah. So for you to have that as your dad showing you, and he's, he's tearing it up, I'm sure, and knowing he's on that leading edge, what a great thing for you to have in your back pocket to learn from. Like, what a great mentor, Oh,
no, 100%. Yeah. Which it all started, whether how to fish a live bait, whether that's leadhead, squid, chovy, whatever, but also, knowing when and how to chuck a surface iron, when to fish plastic and structure, vice versa. So at an early age, I saw the value and, the productivity that artificials can lead to, whether it's a jackpot or whether that's a tournament win or whatever. So, and I've been it always helped keep an open mind for me too, and kind of how I fish.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's like an open mind, it's like different conditions leading to this. And then once you venture out onto your own boat, you can kind of see that replicate those same conditions and say, a little light bulb goes off. Hey, leadhead and squid. Hey, a bucktail, something falls a little slower, something like that might, you can capitalize on it. Yeah. So once you moved out of like that kind of half-day boat thing onto like the skiff thing, what were you fishing on back then?
Oh, geez. I mean, and albeit I'm still a kid, so my dad, I think he got his first skiff, I think I was in middle school, a little like 16-foot Sea Squirt. Those boats are rad, by the way. He had like a little 75 Suzuki on it. And yeah, that was, I probably was 95, 96 or so, if not sooner. But what that equated to was, fishing locally around Long Beach, Redondo Beach, Palos Verdes. We fished a lot of Santa Monica Bay. But yeah, it was just us going out instead of going on the sport boat. It was taking the skiff out.
And it was just you and your pops.
Me and my dad, and we basically, and this is like, back then too, the program was you'd get like half a tank of, chovy. We didn't have as much sardine back then. We had a little bit, but you'd bring that, and then you'd still fish plastics. But you kind of get them going with chum, kind of sport boat style.
Yeah.
And then kind of capitalize them with plastics and stuff. But yeah, it was just us fishing the peninsula, Santa Monica Bay, some of the reefs, some of the wrecks. But a lot of it was spent around the kelp line and some of the shallow reefs around Palos Verdes. Whether it's mainly calicos, but also when the sea bass were in town, we'd fish sea bass. We'd kind of fish a little bit anything. The skiff, we kind of did it. Yeah, we just charged it. Went to cat, a little 16-foot skiff. We fished. Our first tournament was then like 90. I was 12 or 13. Just led him down the path though for private boating and kind of to progress to where he's at today. But those were the early days. Was just ripping around in that little 16-foot center console, all over Santa Monica Bay.
And was there a lot of skiffs doing that at the time? I mean,
there was always I would say it was just a different ballgame back then. Like, for example, some of the local tournaments, like the Western Outdoors Jackpot tournaments, they'd have over 150, 200 boats, and those are all private boats, But I would say not to like where it is today. You'd, see a lot of whalers, a lot of traditional cuddy cabin stripers, kind of just your traditional boats, but not at the level and kind of like how hyper-focused some of the boats are today. But there's still guys out there. But I would say as far as artificials, calicos, that was a pretty niche thing, which it kind of, on a lot of ways, hasn't changed. Still very niche, just a lot more people doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That first tournament you were talking about, that was it Western Outdoor News?
Yeah.
Tournament. How'd you guys do in that? Do you
Yeah.
remember?
Well, that was my first tournament. I was like 12 or 13. I don't know. It's a little grom. But we actually did really well. I think we got 9th place or so out of like 150 some odd teams. So we were ecstatic, we spent a lot of time before, to get to that stage of like actually doing well in tournament of just like, he'd take me to the seminars, whether that's Ben Seacrest, Greg Stotesbury, Barry Breitenberg, they were kind of the dudes back then. They were the guys winning all the tournaments and doing well, one of those events, I know they had like a 38-pound bag or something crazy. Yeah. But yeah, we were just he was kind of learning a lot. That was that calico bass, chasing calico bass artificials with Ben and Greg was kind of a thing, as we studied that, and try to apply some of those techniques to kind of fish on our own. That was different than what we had learned in sport boats. Sport boats set up on structure or along the leading edge, but this is us really kind of hunting around for bigger fish, whether that's in shallow or in the kelp or in reefs and what have you.
Yeah, you can kind of get in tighter and pick through that structure a little more.
All the stuff you couldn't fish in a sport boat, you could do in a private boat.
Yeah, I've been on the sport boat looking in like inside breaks and stuff, and you're like, oh, it's if it's biting out here, it's definitely biting in there, And then were you like all in at that point? Like, let's say like 12 years old, or are you like?
Yeah, well, I mean, as a kid, I was always like, I loved it. I really enjoyed doing it. My dad never pushed either. It's like, no matter what we did, it was if we were into it, he'd ask us when to come, but I was willing to wake up early and go and hop in the boat or sport boat, whatever. Also, at an early age, I was always really kind of into it. I would say, yeah. And he would just take me along, and I would just go. And, I wasn't as like, again, I was just a byproduct of my dad's passion in a lot of ways. He was driving most of kind of, as far as what we're doing, how we're doing it, the tackle, as much as I knew, I just knew how to make a cast. And I knew how to tie a Palomar knot and a uni knot. And that's all I really needed to know, or pin on a bait, or how to rig a swim bait on on a head. I could do those things. But I was down for it, and I was into it. But that kind of, again, as I got older though, fishing wasn't always the number one thing, as I got into, as a teenager, I kind of pivoted into, skating and hanging out with my friends and girls and whatever else. So I kind of
distractions.
Yeah, a lot of distractions, which is great. Those were super fun though, those years of just like skating and like I'm definitely feeling like the old head now, because like back in my day, I would just skate until the sun was going down, and then I'd make sure I was home or had a quarter to go call my parents to pick me up if I'm somewhere. But yeah, man, it was fun. But yeah, I kind of got out of skating, so to speak, just because I was doing my own thing as a teenager, you know. But I always fished though. Still, if my dad, he asked me to fish, and I was available, so to speak, I would go. But there was a time when got older and I got into other things, But the older I got, though, that's kind of when I circled back throughout college, and so.
You said something there about pressure on your kids to like fishing, or it could with anything, motorcycles, whatever your passion is, you want your kid to like your passion. And I've seen it times where that's backfired, that pressure backfires on a kid. Like, the dad wants a kid to like fishing so much that he hates it.
Yeah.
And I think about that with my kids. Like, I don't have any kids yet, but when I do have kids, I'm like, how do I get them to love fishing?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, speaking as a father now, I have two boys. I kind of, if they're into it, cool. If not, I don't hard press, but they've been spoiled though too, especially my oldest, where he's like, I feel like every time he's gone out though, it's been like a killer day. So he's ruined though, because he expects like when it's not biting, he's like, oh, it's just not biting, I'm just going to sit down, because he's had these killer experiences already. Yeah. Where my youngest though, he's like, I'm in the garage, he's right there. I'm messing with my kayak, he's sitting in the kayak. I'm like saying this color, that color. He's really more in tune. But we'll see. Again, I don't hard push them for anything. So if they're into it, cool. If not, whatever.
Yeah. Well, it'd be cool if you eventually, kind of take them under your wing, how your dad did.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Grow into that, and next thing you guys are fishing tournaments together. I think that's awesome.
And that's the thing, when we're going fishing, it's like they're a little spoiled though too, where it's like, I kind of like, I like it, but I don't like it. Is like, his first calico, like Jack, my oldest, was on an AFTCO family trip on a sport boat on the Clemente out of Dana, and it was on like a 5-inch swim bait and like a warbait's head.
Nice.
But if he was gonna to go and fly line an anchovy, probably no clue. So like I part of me hates the fact that they haven't. I still think like those sport boat roots and that culture is very beneficial to be more well-rounded as a versatile angler.
Yeah.
Versus just solely like, oh, it's artificials and it's like, 9-inch swim bait or whatever. You kind of have to have a little bit of all of that just to be a well-rounded angler as a whole. But anyways. Is
there anything that you learned back in those days coming up fishing on the sport boat that you implement today in your program when you're out fishing?
Yeah, that's actually, she was talking about this recently. It's just like being able to kind of assess the water. Mm-hmm. From a sport boat is a different scenario than from private boat, but you can still take things and apply them in a private boat. A lot of times, you're set up on a sport boat, you're on a spot, you're whether you're on anchor or drifting. And especially say, you're that guy on the bow with the jig stick, you're kind of picking and choosing which cast you make or vice versa. Mm-hmm. You might see, just be mindful of like, hey, if he throws 1s and 2s off port, keep an eye out off the, port corner or vice versa. And if some bird's dipping down, there might be some fish under there. Or if it's, depending on which way the current's going, there's some opportunity to set up on another side of the boat and to kind of keep open eyes as far as what the birds are doing, and being able to place a cast where it needs to go, whether that's a calico or whether that's a yellowtail or a barracuda, just seeing some of those little things from a lot of just being on the water ultimately too. Just those years of just being on the water, whether it's a sport boat or whatever, of just knowing and understanding like types of certain scenarios that can repeat itself, and capitalize on that.
It does all repeat itself.
Yeah.
In ways when you're out and, conditions, there's only so many different conditions that we get, especially like, let's say fishing PV, right? It's really the wind can only go a couple different ways, and the current's going, the current kind of goes all over up there, but you see that and that clicks in your brain and you're like, hey, this is what I need to do. I think that makes you a better angler at the end of the day.
And I would say those are very technical, kind of things. And then all the way down to like knowing how to pick the right bait out of the bait tank too. Some people just still don't know how to do that. It's like, just, or if one's bad, to chuck them out there and get another one, So there's little things that I've learned early on that, especially with this offshore fishery we've had or some of the other stuff going on. So,
going into more tournaments when I was younger, I was maybe like 2012 and stuff. I would fish some of those early SWBA tournaments.
Oh yeah.
And, I was in like a 14-foot aluminum boat, and there's these 60 bay boats, these amazing boats. It was like the glory days of, calico bass tournaments, I feel like. But you guys were always in the top, I would feel like, or you guys had a lot of great finishes.
Yeah. Oh shoot. I mean, those SWA days, that's like what, 08 is when we really started fishing it a lot. 08 through 2012. I was fishing with one of my good friends, Randy Spicer. Yeah, we had a heck of a time. We learned so much too fishing that series, and even that time frame of like 08 through 2010, I would say that's like kind of I don't know if you would put a term to it, but kind of the golden era of when things really kind of progressed with tackle, lures, baits, and things. Because for the longest time prior to then, it was like a 4 to 7 inch swim bait on like a, half ounce to 1 ounce, shad triangle head, a surface iron, and maybe a hard bait, maybe. Or if you're a freshwater angler and a little more in tune with things, you were experimenting with spinner baits, crankbaits, musky baits, other things. But for the longest time, it was very traditional, just a swim bait and a surface iron, or like a scampi style creature bait on a head at the wall. But yeah, those are the years of like, the war baits head when we, guys were fishing. First started with like Arky style heads, with the brush guard, and then the war baits thing came about with Afrin. Now it was like 09 or 010 is when that came about, and that was kind of eye opening to seeing what we could do. We actually would fish jigs a lot. Skirted jigs, I guess, but more freshwater style skirted jigs.
Like
but never
football head or something like that.
Yeah, but they never came with the right hook. It was never really the right shape, or the weights weren't heavy enough. But that's when we first had some tools that we could really, take and apply, and put them in structure, put them in kelp and other things, and had the right hook on it. It was beefy enough to handle. We're fishing 65-pound braid, 40-pound leader, and then plus everything else that snowballed from there. Fishing crankbaits and spinner baits and weedless baits, and you just keep going down the line of all of the baits that kind of came into the scene, after that 2009, 2010 timeframe, but are now kind of standard. Everybody kind of fishes that stuff.
Yeah.
But early on, I was actually kind of a little more unorthodox, or unique to be fishing some of, those freshwater style baits or whatever it may be.
Let's say like a war bait is a very specific. It has a lot of applications. Like I know freshwater guy use them. There's a lot of different applications. But what you're saying with the right hook, the right head shape, the right thick weed guard, it is a very specific calico bass, sand bass, saltwater bass lure and tool that we need. And I mean, before that, like you're saying, a football head doesn't have. It's got that light wire hook and everything like that.
Yeah, I mean, when we had access to that stuff before anybody else did. And we love that.
Yeah, for sure.
It was like 09, and we were up in Santa Barbara fishing a tournament, and I had like a pack of samples that Afrin had sent us. And we actually never met. We met Afrin through BD originally. That's another thing. So like as far as social media goes, that didn't even exist. It was just all, forums and stuff.
Club.
Yeah, or if you knew somebody, you're in this like, we didn't have group text back then. It was just forums and like AIM and just all sorts of other things that we were utilizing to communicate with each other. But we met this dude Afrin down in San Diego, and he's like, "Hey, I have this bait and this head I'm working on. I'd love for you guys, to test them, try some out." And we came from similar walks of life. He was kind of from the action sports industry. Some of my best friends and things by that time we were fishing together. We all kind of had a similar sort of style or way we went about our business. So we all kind of connected, and he originally designed that to fish structure, more up and down, fishing in La Jolla or Point Loma, some of those wrecks and reefs down there. And Afrin we call it going Afrin when you're just sinking a bait out all at the bottom. He's like the king of like stitching structure and fishing a spot up and down and deep. That's what he designed it for. And then actually when he came up and fished with us, he's like, how you guys are fishing is actually not what it was made for, but it's working because we were chucking wine. We fished pretty aggressively. 1 ounce and a half with like a 5 or 6 inch swim bait, cast and wind, fishing it fast or fishing it through shallow reefs or vice versa. But yeah, it just held up, and the hooks wouldn't bend out. It was the right weights. It just just worked. And there's some tournaments where we're able to fish in some kelp or fish through some structure that if we fish our old shad head baits, you're going through a pile of lead. Where these baits are actually able to fish it. I was surprised when I could fish one of his baits and I'd still have the same one I tied on that morning. It survived a whole day of and we're abusing those things. We're fishing like we're bumping rocks, fishing. And that's kind of where they live too. I always say fish where they live, and that was really cool just to be part of all of that early on. I still have some of the samples, early ones that he made. He sent us some really wild colors that I still kind of keep just because they're just little relics, memorabilia of just a time of when things changed.
Yeah, I mean, to not have to retie when you're saying you're going through a pile of lead, just the time to retie takes you out of the game. If in a tournament, like every minute counts, every cast counts, and if you can, save 30% of tying knots and frustration.
Yeah,
that's a big thing in tournaments, frustration.
Yeah, but those Estubetas, man, those were the deal. Like we had so much fun. We learned so much. Met some great people. I mean, we were talking about it like at that last SBS, so like some of the early SWBA Newport tournaments, you'd have like 70 boats.
Yeah.
So that's when things were really cranking. But it was a lot of fun. Things were kind of moving fast. Things were progressing. A lot of talented anglers. And I mean, I learned, that's probably when I did the most growing as an angler, was fishing those tournaments. And then finding success too, we'd done well, placed, we hadn't won one yet, but we had done fairly consistent, more or less, fish in different areas. One thing I enjoyed about that tournament series is that it forced us to kind of fish in different areas. Mm-hmm. So whether that's going down to Oceanside, we never fished Oceanside, but it made us go down there and we, fish in the barn kelp and fish in, some areas I never would have fished if it wasn't for the tournaments. We're fishing up in Santa Barbara, going down to San Diego, and then also our normal haunts, whether it's Orange County or LA, Santa Monica Bay. But it was a cool deal just to experience other places and things.
Yeah, I love that. That's like you get to open up, like we can kind of get complacent in our fishing. I know at least I can, of like, all right, I'm just going to fish the break wall.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's easy. It's there, but it is fun, like going different places and trying new things and finding new areas. And those formats where they were open formats where guys could run like anywhere, it seemed like, and they had the boats to do it as it progressed.
Yeah.
Really made it an exciting time for calico bass fishing for sure. What were you fishing on at the time?
Yeah, so the first boat me and Randy fished off of, and these are all, Randy was pretty much the guy who was like, he was the one, Craigslist or wherever, boat trader, finding boats. And the first one we fished off of was it was like a little 17-foot catamaran, or what do you call it? A tunnel hole.
Okay.
It was a 17-foot tunnel hole. It was like a little river rat boat.
Okay.
But it had like it would have like a 175. It had a bigger motor than it probably should have. So that thing flew. But it was like we were on like it felt like you're just ripping around on like a bodyboard. It had like a grip tape front deck. That thing was killer, but we freaking charged into that thing. Highly irresponsible, but super fun. That was the first boat. We basically ran that thing to the ground, like literally, like that Santa Barbara tournament I was talking about. We actually basically almost sunk in that tournament.
No way.
Yeah. Long story short, we went up to practice, realized that we had a crack from the fuel tank just slamming from, we'd been doing Clemente and Catalina and all sorts that we shouldn't have done. So just all of that abuse, it started cracking in the hole. And then, we shot up. We were like 10 miles north of Santa Barbara, heading to Gaviota. There's a little reef off Gaviota. And then we realized that, like, hey, why is the boat? There's a lot of water in the boat. Like, oh, shoot, there's way too much water in the boat. So we just jammed back south into Santa Barbara, into the harbor. Basically, the boat's like, sterns. Can't even get the boat on plane. Thank goodness at Santa Barbara, that harbor's really small and tight. So we jammed it in there. I remember people were saying, slow down. And we're like, we can't, we're sinking. And then, we gated to the ramp, ran up, get the truck. Basically, it was like maybe had
boat's just lowering.
A few minutes left. able to get on the trailer, and then we just let all that water drain for another 45 minutes, and then we had driven up there. This was our day before the tournament to just check things out. So we're like, hey, what do we do? And we ended up going to Home Depot, doing some fiberglass work in the back of their parking lot, enough to get us floating for the next day. We fished that tournament. We couldn't go that far, so we went. We had those old, laminated printout maps of like SoCal hotspots.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't know Santa Barbara much at all, but we knew some reefs and up in Gaviota, some other stuff. So we look on that map. He's like, "Where do you want to fish?" I'm like, "I don't know." Like, but we look on the map. Thank goodness we had that map. There was a spot called Mohawk Reef. If you're from up that area, you'll know what Mohawk Reef is. Mainly just like Mohawk Reef sounds cool. Let's go there.
Yeah.
It was 2 miles north, and we fished it. But dude, it was biting. We got like a 6 and a 4. I think we got third place in that tournament, halfway sinking, and just it was a total train wreck. But for whatever reason, when me and him fished together, if like the wheels weren't falling off, like we weren't doing well. When everything was working and like optimal, like we sucked. But if things were like, we've had a bait tank fly off the boat on the way to the tournament. We've had all sorts of things happen. And typically when something bad happens is when like we're at our finest.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the first boat. And then the next boat after then was a 20-foot Hydra Sports, the 20 Bay. Yeah, we called that one. She was called a Hydra Hoe.
Nice.
She was great. That boat was, dude, that boat took us everywhere. We fished Santa Barbara Island, Clemente, all the standard stuff. But it had that really durable, what do you call that? It's a reinforced hull. So it's like a small 20-foot boat, but it fished like a bigger boat, and it did well in big water.
Yeah, they kind of have that V that comes
Yeah.
up on those, right? Okay.
Yeah, it had that the Kevlar reinforced hull on those older
nice.
ones. That thing was just, it was a small skiff, but it fished bigger for whatever reason. It did well in bigger water.
You weren't able to break it in half.
No.
As
No,
much
but
as you tried.
the only issue with that boat was it had an Evinrude defect. So
man.
that basically, if you're familiar with the defect motors, yeah, they're fucked.
Yeah.
So basically, that was a whole other set of issues with that boat. But yeah, then we fished the tournament through that. We got our first. Actually, my only win was in the 2011 year with Randy. We won the night tournament in that boat, which that was a whole nother story. But yeah.
What were you guys fishing in the night tournament? Is that like are you guys going out to offshore wrecks? Are you guys at the wall?
No, we fished in Santa Monica Bay. We fished a submerged jetty out in Santa Monica. That night was crazy. Again, the troll motor wasn't working. When we got there, Randy's under the bow, like, fixing the plug. I hooked like an 8-pounder right off the bat while he's fixing the troll motor. I always called him Randgiver because Randy's just good at like just figuring stuff out. Yeah, that night we caught him. We weren't the only boat up in that stretch, but there's a number of other boats, which everybody caught fish, but we were just on like a little nectar spot of that wall. A small area, but we caught 35 pounds that night.
Wow.
So like a 7-pound average.
Wow.
Which at the time, I think still, well, to this day, is still one of the bigger bags ever weighed as far
That's
as
massive.
for 5 fish. Yeah. Yeah, that night was insane. That whole year though, 2011, like that, we caught so many fish that year. We were just dialed though too. We were fishing all the time. The night before, the Wednesday before the tournament, we went to go just take a look at it because the wall had been biting really well just for that tournament. We were pretty much dead set on fishing the wall. We were, it was good for about 25 pounds. And then I had a hunch like, hey, let's just go check out Santa Monica. We hadn't been there in a while. But typically kind of if the wall's biting, that one will bite too. And we fished that Wednesday before. Our buddy Larry Passad was with us. We caught 2 fish in like 3 casts. One was like a 9-pounder and the other one was like an 8. We're like, okay, we're starting here Saturday.
Yeah.
And then we went back Saturday and same thing. First cast was like an 8 and then
Wow.
we just caught him. That was a year of that 9-inch big hammer sledgehammer.
Yeah.
We freaking mowed him on that thing.
I was just gonna ask about that. Like, there was a time when the baits went from 5-inch to gigantic.
That
you
was
saw
that.
some that were like 12-inch.
Yeah.
Just
Big Hammer
massive
had
bait.
the sledge. Mike at Pearl had like Caesar's bait. It was like a 7 and a 9. The MC, of Viejos was like a 7 and a 9. Again, that's like 2 years later. Things just snowballed into the weedless, the slug, and whatever else. But fun time.
Do you see that as? I don't see a lot of guys fishing those anymore.
Yeah.
I really don't. Like, it doesn't seem like common practice. Not to say that they don't work. I'm sure they still work, but it did kind of change because everybody was throwing
Yeah.
those, and then everybody went to throwing weedless, then A-rigs.
Yeah, I think it's just trends.
Yeah.
Really, I keep some in my box. Like I fish them, like but again, I experienced like what opportunities some of those baits can provide. So like I'm actually like I fish a lot of different stuff, but I'm still relatively simple, and I fish a lot of classic stuff too, just because like it's proven that it works. I know that it works. And I save some of those baits for different opportunities if it's a tournament or if I'm at the island or someplace where it's like, ooh, this feels, or I might need something a little bit different. If everybody's fishing, like, believe me, I love like my buddies at Kicker, Randy, which I'm talking about was my partner at the PKs. But sometimes you need something a little bit different, or if everybody's fishing the same swim bait tail, you may need something a little more subtle, more kick, I kind of tweak out on that too, though. I think about how much vibration my bait's putting out or not, and I kind of will tweak from there with different baits and things. I don't really get caught up too much in color, but as far as how much displacement or I don't know. But yeah, big swim baits still work, just for the listeners out there. Don't put those away because you may be missing on some bigger bites.
Kind of going back to like simplifying things. The other night I went out to the breakwall and I was like, I'm fishing a 3/4 ounce swim jig with a 4-inch big hammer.
Yeah.
I was like, this is what I grew up doing. I know this is where I've, ran through the whole gamut of weedless and, it's all kind of changed, but I went back to that. It's still biting.
Yeah. Like my kayak fishing, I don't bring much. I bring like a 3700 with some jigs, some heads, some creature baits and some tails. And like, that's it. And like, yeah, I just fish the same. It's funny. I posted to you like an ounce, 3/4 and 1 ounce. And I don't get crazy on color anymore. I got like straight black or green pumpkin and chartreuse or something, and a big hammertail and like a crawl. Yeah, I keep pretty simple.
I think it's satisfying too. Like sometimes I'll go out and I'm like, hey, I just want to catch a fish on a crankbait.
Yeah.
Or I want to dial in a spinnerbait and kind of work through those different things so that maybe when you are fishing a tournament or it does get slow, you can really dial in and have the confidence. Like you pick up a setup, you're like, it's completely dialed. I know what I'm looking at. I know how I'm going to cast. I know how I'm going to fish it. And I think the best anglers think about what their lure's doing in the water. They're not just blind casting, right? Like I want to picture bouncing off a rock and I'm waiting for that bite already. I'm not just like surprised by the bite.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. You want to fish with confidence and
Yeah. So did that kind of lead you to where you are at now at AFTCO?
Yeah, in some ways or another. Like when I was fishing those tournaments, I was very much so I was in college. In some ways trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. Or actually in a lot of ways trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. So I thankfully, with what I went to school for, I was able to end up getting a position in that. So I went to school at Cal Poly Pomona for e-marketing, and this was 2000 and this was like 08. Yeah, I think 08 through like I finished school in 09, 010. I don't remember. Yeah. But I was originally a computer science major, faltered in that. Computer programming, I made it quarter of the way through some of the classes, could not hang. And then there was a new program called e-commerce, e-business, which this is like early buying things on the internet was still relatively new.
Yeah.
I don't know how big that class size is now, but back then there was only like a couple, maybe 150 of us, for a Cal State school. That's relatively small.
Yeah.
And at the time I was working retail at Sports Chalet. I was working the fishing counter, working the camping counter. Again, I would like to snowboard at that. One big thing aside from fishing, I've always kind of skated or I was snowboarding heavily that time of the year. So I worked at Sports Chalet mainly just so I could ride for free at the local mountains and meet the reps. Like I knew that if I couldn't afford all this expensive snowboard gear, but if I worked in the shop, got free lift tickets, and then met some of the reps, and ride decent, I figured I could get some gear, so I was able to at least meet some of those guys, get boards and things and also ride for free. But I still fished for fun on the side. I was fishing golf course ponds, fishing the tournaments. So I was kind of juggling between fishing, tournaments, skating a little bit, snowboarding a bunch, and also still going out, having a good time, my early 20s. I ended up getting a position at Sports Lake corporate office on their web team.
Oh, wow.
So actually while I was still in school, so my background for my career now today was, in e-commerce, running websites, managing websites. But it was cool though, because I was able to work at a corporate level, utilizing enterprise software. We had big ERP systems for inventory pricing. So I kind of went through the deep end of just learning how to run a website and run a web business, throughout school in a really young age. Yeah, that's actually kind of where my background and for what I do now got started. I was there at Chalet for 5-6 years. Worked a little bit after school there, and then Sports Chalet is no more. But that's kind of when things started to kind of deteriorate. Working there, I was actually one of the last ones on the web team. My whole team had basically left, and I was always like, they're letting this kid who's like a year out of school run everything. Which thankfully I knew how to do it, so I was like capable enough. But like I always thought like this is so crazy that I'm running this show right now.
Hey, it's how you learn, man.
That's the thing. But I'm so I know I wasn't getting paid rightfully, but I learned so much and cut my teeth doing that it gave me the confidence to kind of do a little bit of anything, and which ended up leading into working at AFTCO in 2013. That's when I got my start.
I still laugh when I see those Sports Chalet license plate frames.
Yeah.
They used to be everywhere. Right? I used to have them on my truck. I'd rather be fishing. We'd always swap in, somebody else's with something funny.
I got one on my desk as a little reminder of just like kind of where I've been. But yeah, man. Those were good times, fun times. Learned a lot. And then, 2013, I got the position here at AFTCO. I was the first. And again, AFTCO is very, very much so at that time a traditional fishing brand, a lot of very old school in that sense. So when I came on, there was a website, but there was no website. Mm-hmm. So when I got hired, my job was just to kind of I was the first marketing hire. There was no marketing team, no web team, no anything. I was the first person hired here. Thankfully, Casey Shedd, he was the one who hired me back then. He just knew and understood the importance of getting, a good website, getting some digital branding and all that back in 2013. Fast forward today, it's kind of amazing, kind of from where we came from back in 13 to where we're at now.
Well, and a great time for you to go to school for that e-commerce, because look where it is now.
Oh, totally.
I mean, just look at Amazon. You know what I mean? Like everybody buys everything online.
Yeah.
So for you to come in with that tool, you're this young kid, you've had this great position, really set you for success for here,
Yeah, I've been very fortunate just timing wise, the way that all happened. And, I had the interest in fishing and, especially been able to work, even with the Sports Chalet, just being able to work around. I've always tried to do things around stuff that I was into. So whether that was snowboarding then or fishing now, been very, very, very fortunate timing wise.
It's still work, but sometimes it
totally, man. Like I'm still like, at the end of this, I got to get back into spreadsheets and planning and production calls and budgets and you name it. But it's still a lot of fun at the end of the day because I'm working in something I love. So,
I'm sure everybody's seen AFTCO, but maybe they don't know. Give us like a quick history on where they started and where they're from.
Yeah. So AFTCO, family owned and operated, number one. The roots for AFTCO since 1958, J.C. Axelson found AFTCO in his basement of his workshop under his house in Lido Island, Newport Beach, California. So we're very much so a local brand in a lot of ways as far as how we got started. Again, originally it was all big game tackle, so roller guides, the gaffs, our unibutts, all that. That was the bread and butter for AFTCO from the late 50s through the 70s. Mm-hmm. And then apparel and clothing, kind of what you think of AFTCO today, that really didn't happen until the late 80s, 90s. That was the heyday, I would say, for like the clothing, the short shorts, the wovens, the button-down shirts that had all sorts of prints and stuff. AFTCO was it, and not many other clothing companies that were fishing in the 90s that I know of, but that's kind of where things really kind of started. A lot of it took a backseat, though. After the 90s, things kind of slowed down. They really didn't start getting back into the clothing line and developing the line until 2013, kind of when I came in. That was kind of the refocus of the brand, of the product. We built back when I first started. We had a button-down shirt, 2 button-down shirts. We had 1 or 2 sun shirts. We had our original shorts, 1 other short, and like a couple hats.
Wow.
Our catalog was like 20 pages.
Yeah.
And to what it is today, we have a 160-page catalog, whether it's for guys ice fishing or guys big game offshore fishing or guys bass fishing. We kind of have a little bit of everything now.
You know, when I think of AFTCO, even like guide components and like especially the clothing though, I know it's going to be like a quality product.
Yeah.
But I think you guys have built a great mindset around or like associating the brand with quality because everything is very well made. It doesn't fall apart. And
Yeah.
fishermen abuse clothes, especially. You know
100%.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Whether we're pouring bleach all over it or fish blood, whatever, out on the water, it is like quality products, which I
Yeah.
really like.
And you know, even before I came in here, that's something AFTCO's always done is prided itself in, you know, making high quality things, you know, whether that's the guides, the gaff, or a shirt. You know, everything that we produce, it's, you know, it goes through testing process. It goes through a whole line of product development, a lot of feedback from, you know, here internally, pro team, vice versa. And we won't like put something out unless it kind of has our sign of approval.
Sure.
You know, like rest assured, if you get one of our bibs and jackets that are out in the market, I can tell you pretty much 98% of the time, myself, my dad, others we've done a Clemente run in less than ideal conditions. And unless it passes some of those tests, you know, it doesn't really get that check of approval of being waterproof. You know, I always think if you could survive a 4-hour, you know, trip, channel crossing to Clemente,
Pounding.
wind coming out of the southeast, you know, 3 to 5 short interval, you know, and be dry after, like mission accomplished.
Yeah.
So there's a lot goes into testing. You know, any things we do come out with, if there's any issues, we're always reiterating. So like our boots, for example, so I'm staring at them. Our first pass on boots, you know, there was a lot of hype around our boots. We won the ICAST award for new footwear for it. That was kind of my little baby in a lot of ways. But the first PO, we had issues with, you know, the back tabs were pulling off, some other issues with like excess glue or vice versa. And then we went in, you know, we went to the factory. Our samples were great.
Yeah.
And this happens if you were in manufacturing or what have you in any business. But samples and everything were killer. And then we got production and had issues. So that first PO, we pulled a lot of it, went over to the factory, ironed out some of the issues that we had. And then the latest drop that we got has a lot of those issues fixed.
Nice.
So, you know, it's one thing too, if something's not perfect, we go in and make sure that we get it right. And I commend and, you know, and I'm proud of the team, especially the sheds of just being, they're capable and able to, you know, invest and make sure we spend the time needed to get the right product out there. And if it's not right, you know, we'll fix it, tweak things. So we're always, a lot of things we don't talk about, like a button or something may be off on a shirt, you know, the first round, and then we'll fix on the next PO or a logo placement, or it could be, you name it. We've done a little bit of everything. So, yeah, AFTCO does a good job of just making sure what we put out there, you know, has our brand and has our name on it. We want to make sure it's right.
Yeah, we're here in the showroom, and the amount of product you guys have, like this is just all sample, or this is like what you guys carry. It's huge. You know, to go from a couple shirts and shorts 10 years ago to where you're at now, to have all these finished products that are all tested and tried, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I'm stoked to see kind of where we've came, you know, and what we have available. And we're not done, you know, we're always doing new things, and makes it fun too, you know, like that's one thing is like I'm just the marketing guy in a lot of ways, but I'm also that, you know, I'm the loudest when it comes to product. You know, if I have feedback or something's not right as a fisherman, you know, and I enjoy that part.
And I've seen you've been traveling a lot. Like you get to go to all these different events. ICAST. What's ICAST? Like I've never been. It looks really cool.
Yeah, ICAST is fun. You know, I think I've gotten desensitized to it. It's like I think I'm on last year's year 8. It's almost going on my 10 years of ICAST, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, ICAST is cool. It's you know, it's a B2B show, so it's only buyers, media. So it's not open to the public, but it's kind of the opportunity for everybody in the industry, you know, one to represent the brands, and also to launch new products and new categories and things at the event. So for us, it's a big show. You know, most of the time we launch our fall line and our spring line all at that show. So we've done pretty well too. Like I would say, ICAST is like as far as for my job, that's my biggest tournament of the year. It's my biggest derby. You know, they have a thing called New Product Showcase.
Yeah.
So between like the product development team, the marketing team, sales team, it's our opportunity to kind of launch a product, get in front of media, get in front of buyers, and then they vote on what the best products are in those categories. So we've been able to win, you know, in a bunch of different categories throughout the years. That's actually one thing I'm like most proud about of working here and the team is just being able to win some of those category awards.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where we set goals of like, okay, we're getting into footwear. We would love to win one of these footwear category awards. You know, we build the product, get in front of buyers and media. They check them out, they test them, you know, and they vote for us as the best in that category. So it's always proud to kind of look back and see, you know, where impacts we made in different categories, whether it's the men's side, women's side, footwear. You know, we have a cool little. We've actually just got like a little trophy case to put them all in before they were all just kind of sprinkled out around here.
Yeah.
Yeah, ICAST's a lot of fun. It's just cool to see what everybody else up to. I'll see a lot of friends. I got a lot of friends now in the industry, you know, from various brands or different, you know, whether it's our pros or tournaments we work with or publications we work with. It's just a good time to kind of catch up and show them what's new kind of for next year.
Well, and a fisherman too, you get to go around and
Totally.
see all these new lures and everything. You're like, oh man.
And you know, for me, I don't go to the biggest booths. I go to the smaller, the guys off to the side that may be new or maybe because there's some cool stuff that's out there. And again, with travel, being able to go to other fisheries and experience different things, that's been great for me personally. Of just at the end of the day, I think we're all just fishermen and we're all just chasing a fish. But everybody kind of regionally and culturally, we have different approaches and different styles. You know, here in the Southern California and the West Coast, it's like, you know, it's conventional reels, surface irons, you know, like, oh, gung ho about it.
Yeah.
And which is cool, you know. But then you go to, say, the Northeast, it's more so like traditional spinning cast setups, but if they could be fishing the canals, it could be surf casting for striper. You know, their surface iron isn't a surface iron. It's like a bucktail or it's like a pop-in bait, you know, but that's their surface iron. Or I go to Florida and, you know, we're instead of chasing bird schools like we're chasing big, you know, big rays of cobia. It's like, kind of like you're chasing bird schools, but instead you're looking for, you know, you're on the binos and you're running around looking for a big ray to come up because he's got like, you know, 15 to 30 pound cobia under him.
You're just following
him around, and then once you pull up on him, those fish are swimming underneath him, and you're chucking, you know, bucktails, you know, but working the same way you would a surface iron. I was like, oh, this is just like yellowtail fishing, just different, you know. So that's what I really do enjoy with traveling is being able to experience those different fisheries, you know, throughout the country, freshwater and salt, because it's like at the end of the day, I always think we're all doing the same thing. It's just for different species, you know.
Yeah. Have you taken anything that you've learned, you know, now that you've gone East Coast, Florida, you know, everywhere, and implemented that into your, like, you're a spinning reel guy now, or what do you?
No, I mean, I would say I'm still very West Coast, you know, in a lot of ways, and I'm you know, and I'm a bass head, so like for me, it's low pro, you know, conventional. And when I travel, I bring a little travel rod with me, so like, cause like if you give me a spinning rod, I could fish it, but if you give me a bait caster, like I can get that bait, skip it under a dock to the mangroves or whatever. So I kind of take my application there, but I take things that I learned there over here, whether that's, you know, like the slow pitch jigging stuff. Like the guys in Florida have been doing it for a while.
Yeah.
One of my good Benny's Benny Ortiz. And he's kind of like the dude when it comes to that. Thankfully, I get to work with Benny at AFTCO and become good friends with him. But I could pick his brain on like, hey, like these type of scenarios, you know, maybe for cod or for whatever, what would you go with and why? You know, and just it's all relative. But I'll kind of downsize some of those slow pitch jigs or techniques, but then take that and apply that in 80 to 100 foot if I'm fishing structure for bass. Show them something a little different, you know. But anyways, yeah, there's a lot I pick and pull. You're like, there's a little swim bait tails I found in Louisiana that work really good for spotties here.
Nice.
And our other baits, I got these swim baits actually from the tournament last weekend. I fished these little swim baits from Scandinavia.
Really?
It's just a little bit different tail to it, a little different size. So I'm fairly simple, but I get creative too, as far as just, you know, seeing the opportunities that some baits can do over here and something they may not have seen, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or I'm going back east fishing the mangroves and I'm bringing like, say, like a PK5, you know, and fishing through the mangroves and doing really well with it. And those guys are like, hey, what is that? Yeah. You know, like, and just trading notes and, you know, hey, here's a few, I'll take some of those jig heads if I give you some of these baits or, you know, and then I get a lot of crap though too for, those guys are very wary of one of my buddies, our rep. He's like, you West Coast guys in your tins, all you guys come here and bring those stupid surface irons. Those things suck, you know. Like, no, they don't. Then I'll get to fish. And I'm like, okay, actually, they're not that bad. There's a lot of cultural things where, say, if you came here on a sport boat with like a an 8-foot, very legitimate Stella with a spinning setup. It's a little more accepted now, but like 10 years ago, they'd be like, get that coffee grinder off of here,
100%.
Just so there's a lot of cultural things, but I love that part too. I love that. That's what part of makes each region its own thing because of those things,
And no matter, who you fish with or where you go, like a fisherman's a fisherman.
Yep.
You're going to connect on a deeper level than just like you see a guy with like a Bass Pro hat and you're like Bass Pro hat is a bad example because now all the kids love the Bass Pro hats. They're not fishermen.
Yeah.
But, you get that connection with the fisherman. You can talk to a 90-year-old guy and learn something, and you're not just talking with them,
No, 100%. And even for me, even from California and traveling to other parts of the country, there's a stipulation with California, which if you're not aware from California, there's a large stipulation just here from California. So you kind of have a little bit of a negative, cloud around you for whatever reason or another. And they always so I'll travel and they'll try to check me out again, and I didn't realize I had an accent until I went back east, which now I'm very aware that I have an accent being from SoCal, a little more like that surf skate, just being around that and like my style, like rolling up in Vans or whatever, black t-shirt, black hat.
Yeah.
They go, they kind of check you out like, it's a marketing guy. Let's see if you could fish. And they always go they're calling like California Matt, or something. And then I'll and in my little rod, I'll make a skip cast under the mangroves. Oh, California Matt can fish. And then it's and then they say, okay. Then it changed from just giving me a dead shrimp on a popping cork to okay, now we're fishing top water or fishing plastic. So that's a lot of fun though, just to be able to represent, for me personally, being from Southern California, being from the West Coast, to kind of represent our fishery in a way too. I always kind of bring my stuff with me, the war stuff or my baits, and those guys always check too. Hey, what do you got there? I'll catch them on some of the stuff, and they might have never seen a head or a bait like that, and they're like, hey, can I get some? I was like, yeah, dude, here you go. I'm telling my guys hey, there's a market out there. You just need to get a sales rep or somebody out there, but it's a lot of fun.
It's cool to be able to share that. I was traveling for work and we met this guy. He took us, we were in Tennessee, just outside of Knoxville.
Yeah.
And we went out. This guy was so nice. He was a fire chief. Took us out on his bass boat. It's amazing how nice people are out there. It's me and my buddy Howie. He's 2 kids, right? We were 21, whatever. He's like, oh, come fish. You guys are fishermen? Come fish with me. And we went out and we did blacklight fishing with this light, that blue monofilament that I never buy ever, right? That under a blacklight shoots down. It looks like a lightsaber in the line, and you're out there fishing worms for a smallmouth, and you just see your line go whoop,
tick.
Yeah, you see it tick, and it's just cool to I never would have thought to make that application. Not that I really have a use for it here, but it's cool to
just experience
different fisheries,
Yeah, and then you could pick and pull from all those experiences into our fishery here.
Yeah,
just look at us with the bluefin. We've some of my buddies. We work at some publications in the Northeast. It's oh, how are those spreader bars working out for you guys? You guys finally figured that out. We've been doing it for the last 50 years, or things that it's a tuna's a tuna, a bass is a bass, a fish is a fish in a lot of ways. But sometimes we kind of need to open our minds, and just take, learn and apply. And there's lots to be learned. So we're still figuring things out in other parts of the country. They're learning things that we've been doing, or vice versa. So it's always kind of fun to just sit back and kind of just watch it all kind of unfold in an interesting way.
And what's cool is you're getting that, and you're traveling, you're bringing that stuff back to AFTCO, and then presenting products that are usable here that we didn't know about.
Yeah, And at the end of the day, that's kind of the thing is our main tagline is any fish, any water.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's a guy fishing redfish or bonefish in Florida, or is a guy in the Northeast striper and tog and sea bass, or it's here in the West Coast or in the Gulf for speckled trout or or snook or what have you. It's kind of cool to take all that and apply it back into the brand. So
they take bass fishing very serious back there.
Oh, bass fishing!
I don't think people realize how serious it is.
Yeah, we were talking about the Classic.
Yeah,
I mean, dude, the Classic really is the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
it's and for me, that's probably. And again, I'm a bass head, and Calico's obviously, but at the end of the day, I grew up watching TNN on the weekends and the Bassmaster things, and Roland Martin and Jimmy Houston. I watched all the bass tournaments as a kid. I've always followed it. So just to go there, and now we're partnered with Bassmaster as one of the main sponsors, and Go to those tournaments. I'm at the dock at the launch. I'm like, I'm right there and experience it. It's impressive the amount of people that show up. One to like say just the tournament site, then you have like the expo, and then you have like the weigh-ins. It's a spectacle. It's really cool. And I tell people like, some of my friends ask, hey, like, how is that classic, like the trade show? I'm like, dude, it's like the PCS show or the Bart Hall show on freaking steroids.
Oh, so there's like a trade show that goes along with it?
And it's a consumer show. And it's all focused on bass.
Yeah.
And like we give out, like that's my biggest event for the year for just like promo goods.
Wow.
Like I'll hand out 10,000, like little key floats for your keys.
Oh my gosh.
Say like the Kicker Premiere, I do that same setup, but like on steroids. And just the amount of people that walk in through the doors and all of them are just stoked on bass fishing is really cool.
That's awesome, man.
That's one thing, like I'd say with freshwater is you could catch a bass from say California to New York. It's the same fish. It's the same techniques. Where saltwater, it gets sliced and diced, segmented so many different ways.
Sure.
A lot of people like they take the whole week off and like they go there to that event,
That's cool.
It's fun.
I mean, it's such a comparison to like a club bass tournament here.
Yeah.
Where it's, maybe 40 boats or something like that.
Yeah.
Their families aren't there for the weigh-ins and like there's no fireworks. There's no pyrotechnics.
I mean, like the most impressive thing I'd say is like, because I usually get there early because I'm shooting media, with our pros, but there's people there before I'm there. Like this is 4 a.m.
Wow.
Just to go watch some guys take off for 10 minutes and then they leave and go about the rest of their day.
So not even like associated with brands or like just
fans,
spectators,
like thousands of people there just to
Wow.
see their favorite Bass Pro guys, launch in the morning.
Yeah.
Really cool.
And you guys sponsor quite a few of the pros and the tournaments, right?
Yeah. Our pro team's pretty impressive as far as, the folks we have on the team, whether that's, like Jason Christie, Gerald Swindle, Scott Martin, Mike Iaconelli, down to like some of the younger guys, Drew Cook, Wes Logan. We're very involved in that freshwater bass scene.
Yeah, it's cool to see a brand that is, you guys live and breathe fishing.
Yeah.
Here, you can tell we got to go on an awesome tour. Thank you for taking us around, and it's amazing what you guys do here and what you have here. I never would have expected this. I didn't know what I expected walking in here, honestly. But to see that you guys even manufacture things here is pretty amazing.
Yeah, a lot of the tackle manufacturing hasn't changed, and just the staff. A lot of us are fish heads. I didn't even show you the tackle room we have down there. We actually just got a line winder. We just got some custom rods wrapped that are down there, and we gotta get reels for them. We got the boats in the back. We got a kayak stash that you guys haven't seen yet either. So like, or even me, like in some of us, for a while we were going to the local ponds on a lunch break and catching fish.
Nice.
There's some not they're secret, but there's some little ponds around here that you can catch some fish if you spend some time with it. But
what are some of your most memorable fish caught that you think back on that are just like stuck in the file?
Oh, geez. So, I mean, and I'll kind of like roll it back with some of the travel because I've been able to catch some bucket list fish that I've never been able to if I wasn't here.
Yeah.
So I would say number one. I mean, I'm a PB calico. I guess that for me, because calicos are still. I think I get spoiled because I complain like, oh, I haven't been able to fish for calicos, but I would just come off a trip for catch a smallmouth, but I miss my fish, But yeah, my PB calico is probably number one. That's a 9.5 at Palos Verdes.
Wow.
Memorable fish. Oh, cabria. That's probably my second favorite fish to go chase is cabria down in Cia Cortez. I've caught 2 over 20. So my first one was a 24, and then I caught a 21, 22 last year.
Wow.
Those fish, when they go over 20, it's a whole different animal.
They're insane. They're not even the same fish. I agree.
So fun, so violent. I'm trying to get back down there like ASAP.
Perfect. We're going in July.
Are you?
I'll give you the dates. Yeah.
Okay, shoot.
We love fishing.
I was looking at May or June.
Okay.
Let's chat.
We'll figure it out.
And then snook are probably my favorite fish to chase back east when I'm traveling.
Yeah.
And my snook was like a 28. It's a 28. No, I had a 28 and I got a 32. So not a giant by any means, but for me, like just getting one of those big stud snook was really cool.
Inches or pounds?
Inches.
Wow.
We didn't weigh them, but I mean that's like a
it's massive,
large animal, and you're catching them in a foot of water, and I caught catching them on plastics and kicker PK5. Like
No
my spot,
way.
and on spotty, I crack up because I'm fishing spotty gear back there, but catching big fish. Redfish, I got a 34-inch bull red in Venice on artificial. That was killer too.
Yeah.
Quarter-ounce war baits underspin and a 3-inch swim bait.
No way.
Again, like baits that I like to fish, but applying back east.
Red fishing looks amazing.
Redfish is
especially when they get up shallow.
Venice, like
wild.
if you get in the marsh, and like it's a lot of fun too.
Yeah.
And they just pull so hard.
They look strong. You look at them and you're like, that's a strong fish.
Those
it's like
ones,
a spot fin on
yeah,
steroids.
those things just got shoulders.
Yeah.
And they're just, and it's funny too because there's such shallow water. They don't dig on you. They just go horizontal. So you have like long runs sideways.
Oh, that's fun on a little bass reel.
Yeah. What else? Peacock bass. I haven't caught a big one, but I finally checked that one off my list this past summer. And I got one of those clownfish, 10 to 12 pound clownfish and a snakehead all the same day. That was killer. Yeah, I mean, those are probably some of my most memorable ones.
Yeah.
A couple other things I'm trying to check off the list.
It's an impressive list.
Oh, shoot.
Already.
I got one other one because this happened last summer. I was in Michigan for a media event and I had an opportunity to go to Lake St. Clair in Michigan. I got my personal best smallmouth with 5.5. They call it smallmouth Disneyland, and it really is. We had an insane day, just big.
5.5.
Yeah, it was my first fish in the morning.
A football,
dude, giant.
Just a football.
Like, I caught 3 pound, 3 pound smallmouth before, but like those ones, especially in St. Clair, are just built different. Goby eaters. And
they get that look where they're just like,
his mouth's like this, but then it's like head is just wide.
Yeah.
Then we caught a bunch that day. Those are some of the most memorable ones. Something I still like to do, and I haven't got the opportunity to, and I'm trying to this year, is again just getting back to some of our roots at AFTCO. Is just I've yet to catch like blue marlin, and some of that bigger game.
Yeah.
But we got some stuff lined up this year to do some more of that.
Nice.
That's a whole nother scene that I need to understand and experience it and go and kind of just do it.
Yeah.
Blue marlin, white marlin, all that whole scene.
And that's, I mean, as dorked out are the bass guys are on bass fishing.
Yeah.
That's those guys on a scale that is unimaginable.
I've talked with them, and believe me, I learned really quick about how tuned in and how dialed in. If the tuna are foaming, they keep driving. Like it's just they're just focused on billfish. So that's another aspect I'm looking to kind of experience and do. But
look, what does your fishing kind of look like now? You've kind of gone all over. You're still traveling, but like if you're you have some time. I know you got a family and stuff, so maybe limited. But if you're gonna go fish now, like what are you doing?
I'm in my kayak, man. Like,
really?
I like fishing at night on my kayak, and I'm in Redondo, so I fish locally. I try to when I can. I love that's like my favorite thing to do is just put the kids to bed, tell my wife, hey, I'm gonna go out for a little bit and launch a kayak at like. My buddies give me crap like, dude, you go on some like weird hours. I'm like, I go when I can.
Yeah, for sure.
So like I'm like launching my kayak at like 10:30.
Okay.
And then I'm like fishing until like 3 in the morning or something weird, full tweaker. But like that's my time. Like honestly, like you're not sketched out at night. Like no, because no one's on the water. It's like I find peace doing that. It's that, or it's like another thing I like doing again with my kayak is I love fishing Lake Barrett down near San Diego. I usually carve out a few trips to go down there with my kayak and then just green bass, fish bass.
Yeah, I haven't done that, but it looks amazing. Like when it bites. It looks like you can go there and just whack them.
And again, it's one of those places. It's so California. You got to buy tickets on Ticketmaster. Like, who does that? It's only limited to X amount of people. It's barbless. It's a whole laundry list of things, but that fishery is pretty insane if you get on it the right time of the year or kind of when they're snapping. They're all northern strains, so they're all super aggressive. Species, right? Yeah. And being that there's not that many people out on the water, it's pretty much there's a few guys out the days you do go, but I mean I get on my kayak and I just I get lost back in some of those creek arms, especially some of the water we've had, fishing frogs. And the nice thing I like about there is I could fish how I like to fish. I like to power fish, so chatterbaits, frogging, heavy jigs, straight braid. I don't have to do the 5 pound, 7 pound super finessey stuff. You can if you want to, but I mean I do really well just power fishing the same way I would back east. Those are probably my 2 favorite things to do, along with just fishing with my buddies, Randy or my dad, whether that's Clemente or locally, the wall.
Yeah, I saw you guys fish the SBS.
Yeah.
Tell us a little about that. How'd it go?
Yeah, dude, that was my first stint back in the tournament bass fishing. We sucked.
Yeah.
It was a
That's
lot
all
of
right.
fun. Yeah, I mean, we gambled, like in tournaments, it's like, um, you know, you kind of come up with scenarios or game plans.
Yeah.
And this year they have like a spotted bay bass multiplier. So we gambled. You're like, hey, let's just go hog hunt. So we ran up north out of Newport all the way up to back in San Pedro, Wilmington.
Yeah.
There's some really fishy zones back in there, but it's pretty. Everybody knows fish back there. It's pretty hit or miss. It's like you're either gonna catch nothing or a couple fish or some sand bass, or you're gonna hook some nice ones. We didn't really. It just was tough.
Yeah.
Like I dumped 2 fish, which for me, like back to back, losing 2 fish sucked. Like it's one of those things that's like it's a tournament day. Like, things just get weird. And like the fish just came off. But I basically made eye contact with a nice 2-ish, 2.25 pound spotty. First hour or so. And then he just kind of, and spotties are kind of like sand bass where they get that little churd roll thing going on, and he just spun until he just came off. And I just like, there he goes. Nothing I could do about that one. And
it's a heartbreaker.
Lost another one on the other side. Another good one, just up and down on the crank. Dude, treble hooks, dude. Like if I just look at those things, I have hooks in my hands. I don't know how those fish like throw treble hooks, but they just know how to do it. Thankfully, though, we caught a couple fish late in the afternoon. Fishing some shallow grass way back in Wilmington that kind of saved the day from the dreaded DNW to start the year. So, but in a lot of ways, too, and I don't get. I mean, I'm a pretty competitive person. I used to be crazy competitive fishing the tournaments, but way back when. But these days, I'm a little more relaxed, and I'm just stoked to be out there. And if anything, I kind of needed a big kick in the ass to kind of motivate you. So
get out and go fishing. And
make
just
time
for it.
Like, just it's kind of starting from the bottom. All you could look up. All you could do is look up. So
there you go. It's like the reunion tour on those boats that are out there. It's like all familiar faces and stuff.
It's funny too. Yeah, I've seen a lot of good buddies, and like, even my dad. Me and my dad don't fish that often together.
Yeah.
So just like that was the first time we fished together in a while. It was just kind of funny how jittery and how excited he gets. Because I try to keep things relatively cool, but it was fun.
When
I'll look forward to the rest of the year.
When Mike and I went with him, you hook a fish, he's like, woohoo! He's all pumped. Like, and it's a 10-inch calico. It's like it's cool that see someone that excited still about it. Like, I'm hoping that when I'm his age, I'm still that pumped on.
No, yeah,
fishing,
believe me. I don't know how he does it, man. Like my dad's not. He's not. He looks way younger than he is. He's got those good Islander genes, and he's super active, which I think is probably it helps the cause. But yeah, he's up at like 2 to go, before he even launches the boat for a client. He's up early and then he's out late. And amazes me.
It's a grind.
Yeah,
it's a grind. But
I just sit in an office, stare at screens all day, and he's out there, like.
Well, anything new coming from AFTCO you want to share with us?
Oh, jeez.
I know you guys just dropped these new lures. Was that last season?
Yeah, I think lures last year. We launched the lures, and those have been doing well for us. Kind of a new category. My favorite in those is there's a bait called a swimmer.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that's very much so inspired by like a Chuck and Wine surface iron.
Mm-hmm.
It has a kind of more of a glidey kick to it. They all come with like upgraded hardware, so big 4X hooks, split rings, right off the bat. That one I probably have the most fun with, whether it's for calicos or I've got yellows on them. That one's just a fun one. I can fish on my, my jig stick.
Oh, they're light enough to cast, or they're heavy enough to cast on the jig stick.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
And I think it's like 4 ounces or so.
They look like a Cabria killer. I was looking.
That's that's where like we had the samples.
Yeah.
That's where I freaking smoked them on the Cabria down south. 2 years ago now. I had samples, and then my buddies were down there, and I met them up for like a little bomb 4-day, just 4-day mission. We caught one day. I think we had 98 fish.
Wow.
Not all on that bait, but I caught that 22 on that bait and like 18s, big ones.
Those are monsters, man.
Big ones, and they were freaking mowing that thing. And actually, it was a cool little deal I stumbled into. I caught that 20-pounder. I was fishing a clip and I was fishing with wire. So the tag and the wire kept getting hung up on the clip and on the nose of the bait. And the bait would kind of just like, it was just fouled and just kind of coming on the surface. So I was just fast winding back into the boat. and they were coming up and like annihilating it
No way.
off of the like fouled hook thing.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, this third or fourth accident isn't an accident.
Yeah.
So I started just like rod tip up as fast as I can. You know, kind of skip jig.
Yeah.
And I caught that 20, dude, like skipping that thing out of the water. And that thing
No way.
freaking annihilated, like full visual, top water. So like next time we're going down there, I'm like whopper ploppers, big top water baits, you know, like I think there's something about that we've never really tapped into, of just turbulence on the surface, that those fish are just laying down there seeing something, like, you know, creating commotion, versus just kind of swimming. You know, you'll still catch them on like a big hard bait, you know, like our big jerk bait, or the swimmer just swimming it normally, which we were doing really well on. But I feel like that additional turbulence, and I would say like presentation of those baits, I got some of those other fish tuned in for a reaction bite, you know, versus just winding it, you know, versus it just swimming nice and beautifully.
Yeah, for sure.
So anyways,
that's cool.
Pro tip, if somebody else is going down there, get creative and wild on some top water stuff, because I think there's something about
the back
that.
split ring or the middle split ring.
Well, it's funny is I started doing that, and Randy and Skylar were with me, and all of a sudden we're all doing that, and we're like, okay, there's something here. And we're like, next time we go down here, we got to just test some other stuff.
Some wild
you know?
stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you see those guys fish, and I've seen guys fish with like, it's basically a wooden dowel they made into a jerk bait, and they slay them.
Yeah.
You know, they catch them. Mind you, they're doing it every single day and stuff, but that Cabria fishing it's one of my favorites. That's by far, man.
My favorite thing. I mean, and I've had the opportunity to travel and do different things. That's my favorite thing to do. You know,
and the landscape you're looking at while you're
beautiful.
doing it is unreal.
And you know, you don't even need to get on an airplane. That's a 8 to 10 hour drive.
Yeah.
Baja just has itself. It's awesome.
Yeah, we could do a whole podcast on Cabria.
Yes.
Maybe for the next one we do a whole one on Cabria.
Yeah.
But anybody that's like kind of helped you out along the way that you want to give a shout out to? I'm sure there's a million of them, but
yeah, I mean, as just for shout outs, I mean, just number one, I mean, just obviously thank my dad for instilling, you know, kind of the stoke and the passion with me at an early age. You know, and just being able to share time on the water with him to this day. It's nice, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, first and foremost. And then number two, I mean, the Shed family, I got to, you know, just being here in AFTCO, having the opportunity for you guys to come in, you know, on an office, in my office, and just do this stuff and tell our story. And I mean, it's a family business, and I feel very much so part of that AFTCO family, you know, and I'm just very fortunate to be able to work for great people like that. You know, number one, just the heritage of history and just so much positive things that they do, you know, for conservation and being a voice and a force in the industry. You know, there's so many big brands and companies, you know, corporate, mom and pop, you name it, but for AFTCO to kind of be such a large stakeholder in, you know, heritage history and conservation, it's something to be proud about, you know, for me to come into work every day. Other shout outs. I got to shout out my buddies, you know, just those early formative years, I like to call them, you know, fishing with Randy Spicer, Justin Reynolds, Afrin Abutin, you know, Chris Lillis, Justin Hugron, and the whole cast of characters back then. Like, those days were so fun, you know. Those days that kind of came and gone. We're still all around, but it's cool to look back of, like,
everyone has families.
Yeah, you know, we all have kids and families, you know, but like those days of just fishing the wall multiple times a week, running the islands, sneaking into golf courses, float tubing, you know, all that stuff, like, really kind of made us into kind of who we are today. And it was cool to be able to like find other dudes back then that kind of had a similar kind of, you know, style and way we went on our business. Like, back then it was like, dude, fishing sucks so bad. Like, just like you look around, like, whether it's the brands, the clothing, the whole just style, it's different now. It's like, fishing's actually kind of cool, but back then, like, dude, fishing's so lame, but it's so cool. People don't realize how dope like fishing really is. So like, all of us had different action sports, or like, you know, like different backgrounds, but just seeing that, like, we enjoyed it so much. We called it like the action sports afterlife, where you could still kind of like go, like, you know, instead of like trying to find a good rail or something with your buds, you're just trying to find like cool places to fish, but taking that same, like, you know, aggressive approach and style. And, you know, we were doing the videos, like Justin had radio silence back then. We had those like face down bass up videos, which we totally blew it, by the way. We were early on YouTube. Randy always joke like, hey, we were kind of probably could take advantage of that, but we just didn't. We just put videos up because we had fun doing it.
Oh, we'd watch some of your videos and go out and try and do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we're on like beyond junk boats and stuff, and it's like, all right, well, it can be done. You know, it's like a light, like at the end of the tunnel. You know.
Yeah, but just a shout out my buddies and, you know, everybody I fished with, you know, throughout the years. I've been able to kind of, meet some really cool people. Those early, fishing with Jack Soul and some legendary people. As a kid, I didn't really realize it until later on. Some of the stuff that I was exposed to and some of the experiences that I was able to have, at a young age and then into a later age. It's been pretty cool. So.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you for coming out, and thank you for showing us around the office. We had a really good time. Maybe we'll do a little video clip of the back area and kind of show people what AFTCO really is. And I had no idea. So
100%, man.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
We'll see you soon.
Alrighty.